can see my presentation. So the title today is Enterprise Data Management, What Does Good Look Like? Just a sort of little bit of background to this work. So myself and colleagues at Catapult, we, over the last few decades now, for some of us, have been designing and building various data management solutions for clients. And we've built up a lot of expertise in that space. More recently, we've had a slight new line of work come through, which is where clients have already started up a piece of work and they want to know, look, we've already kicked off this new initiative. We want to uplift our data management capabilities. Can you just come in as an independent outsider and tell us if we're on the right track? You guys kind of know what good looks like. So can you come in and provide that sort of independent advice and say that this looks good or not? So what I'm presenting today is what I call a think piece. It's my opinions informed by Dharma and by my colleagues and by years of working in the industry and by doing a lot of this sort of assurance role for clients. And some of the slides in here are borrowed from a piece of work that we did for a large client last year. But there's nothing in here that's confidential or it's all unclassified. So without further chatting, let's move on and have a look at the first slide. So the speaker stuff, you can read that later. So what I'll do first of all is just explain a little bit more in terms of how this think piece works and how to use it. We've then got what I call the 10 indicators of goodness, which we'll go through, and then a little bit in terms of how we can use this. So let's go that way. There we go. So look, basically the rationale behind this, as I said, is lots of people have got increasing volumes of data. They're trying to run data management programs to sort of better manage it. What's interesting is that the problems that people run into are pretty much the same problems all throughout different sectors of the industry. The basic fundamentals of enterprise data management, which you use to tackle these kinds of initiatives, it's the same. So whether you're in the health sector, a telco, travel company, government agency, the basic fundamental practices that you need to do to manage data well, it's pretty much the same from one industry to another. And if you're about to set off and design a program of work to basically uplift, it might be your big integration platform project or your big warehouse project, the principles for designing that program of work is pretty much the same. And this is where this piece comes in. So as I said, this piece of work, you can use it to help design a new program of work in data management, or if you've got an existing program of work, you can use this as a way to sort of help assure that you are on the right track. Now, the other thing I must say about this, this is my opinions. I think they're fairly well informed, and this is, it's a think piece, it's a work in progress, and we certainly welcome feedback from the data management professionals. So if you're in that community working with data and you have an opinion on this, please email it through. We're very interested to hear other people's thoughts and opinions on this topic. Now, the first thing we want to look at is if you're embarking on an endeavor like this, what are you using to sort of provide guidance and advice in terms of, you know, what broadly is data management? What sort of things do we need to improve, enhance in our organization to make things work better from a data perspective? So, you know, we suggest that Dharma is a very, very good place to start. There is this thing, as you can see on the screen, called the Dharma wheel. And at a high level, this categorizes all the different facets of data management. And these are the sorts of things that you need to look at in your program of work, and you need to address these in some way. So it's a very good, useful, handy reminder. There is this large book called the DM book, the Body of Knowledge. It's a great starting point for anyone who is new to data management or is coming, you know, maybe you've worked in the business side of the house for a long time, but all this sort of enterprise data management stuff's a bit new. Where do you go to start? We'd recommend Handbook. It's very accessible and it's applicable to any industry sector. Okay. Now there are other sources of inspiration. There's the knowledge around this is codified differently. Mike 2.0 is another one. But we use Handbook, and you need to have a starting point from somewhere, and this is a good one. Okay. If you're building a program of work, then the trick here is you need to be able to blend what you're doing in data management with the usual program management skills. So some of our clients have got projects that run for many, many years, spending tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. These are very, very large programs of work. So, you know, if you're going to do enterprise data management, you need also to have those generic program management skills and make sure you've got them at the right level of proficiency and competency in your organization. So what is an enterprise data management program? It's where you're doing targeted uplift in data management and you're doing it as part of a large program of work. Look, these things have got lots of different names. They may not be called enterprise data management. They might be the enterprise data lake project, the big integration project, the new CDO's big data project. They'll have different names from one organization to another, but they're big, they're intended at an enterprise level to really improve what you're doing in terms of data management. If you've got something that looks a bit like this, I think this think piece will be useful to you, okay? Now, that Dharma wheel, as I said, introduces the data management capabilities. Within those data management capabilities, we believe that some are more equal than others. We have what we call the fundamental EDM capabilities. And as you can see here on the screen, the data governance, data quality, metadata, reference and master data, these are something that are actually quite critical indicators. If these are present and you're focused on them and you're doing them well, they're often a good indicator of long-term success of the project. If they're a bit undercooked, then your program of work is likely to run into difficulties. Now, bear in mind, we're talking about capabilities. That's policy, people, knowledge, process, as well as automation and tools. We're not talking just about tools, it is capabilities. Now, the analogy here that I use in terms of explaining why some capabilities are more important than others, I use this analogy, I don't know if you follow rugby league, but in rugby league coaching, there is this philosophy of the spine of the footy team. So within the 13 players and their positions on the field, some positions are considered to be more critical than others. So in rugby league, if the hooker, the halfback, 5/8 and fullback, if they're all working well together, then the rest of the team tends to gel and win. If those positions, those spine positions are not working well, the team will often fail. And if you follow rugby league, Melbourne Storm are one of the strongest advocates of this. Having said that, in order to win the game, you need all 13 players on the field, all switched on and working together. And it's the same in data management. You can't just focus on the spine. You've got to look at all the different practices in the wheel because you need to be moving all of them or most of them forward. But as I said, some positions and some capabilities are a little bit more critical than others. And if those spine capabilities are undercooked, then you could run into serious difficulties in terms of moving your program forward. Of the spine capabilities, we believe that the metadata and the data governance are where you focus your energies and efforts. There is a dependency. If you want to then move on to data quality, reference and master data, you really need to have nailed your governance and your metadata first, okay? But as I said, you don't just do these four, you're doing an uplift in all of them, but these are the most critical ones to the overall success. Okay, so once your data management program is underway and you're starting to do capability uplifts, people can do metadata, data governance, you can find that it's then much easier to nurture and grow some of those other things like the data modeling, the data design and data architecture and so on. Now, so a sort of warning slide here. And we've seen a lot of clients who've kicked off these sorts of large projects. As I said, they could be the big integration project, the big lake project, whatever it's called. And often they do what I call the cart before the horse. They think, oh, right, what we really need in this big integration platform is to tip all of our data in so we can then start doing something useful with it. No, stop. That's wrong. If you're doing this kind of project, leave data where it is for now, okay? The most critical thing you do is you go find and you move your metadata and you consolidate your metadata into a data catalog. Once you've done that, then you can identify which pieces of data it makes sense to bring together, okay? One of the biggest mistakes we see in lots and lots of data management projects is people think, oh yeah, we just got to suck all the data, put it all in one place, then we can fix it all up. No, don't bring data together until you've got a good reason to do so. And usually that good reason to do so is identified by an analysis of the metadata in your data catalog. If you don't have that, then you can't come up with a sensible reason for bringing the data sets together. And as you do, you'll almost certainly produce nonsense, okay? So cart before the horse, big red flag for us. Unfortunately, it's a very, very common mistake, okay? And it goes back to this story. Some of these capabilities are really, really fundamental. If you don't nail them early in the project, your project is doomed to fail. Another indicator, clear statement of scope. Might sound a bit obvious, but it's often, overlooked or undercooked. And in terms of scope, there's different facets to the scope. The first one is, what types of data and information? Is it everything we've ever found in the organization, or is it particular kinds? Are we looking at streaming data, structured data only? What about semi-structured? What about the archives? Look, as you start this program of work, you need to think about this, okay, and scope it. Because if you don't, you might build a solution, you might buy technologies, you buy software, and suddenly you go, oh, but that doesn't work with unstructured data. Well, was it in scope or not? Oh, we never thought about that. Okay, so before you run into difficulties later on in the project, have that clear definition of what types of data information are going to be in or out of this project. Another important aspect of scope is boundaries of the enterprise. Now that might seem a bit obvious. Well, we mean, where we work, this place. Well, hang on. In some very, very large organizations, you effectively have lots of different kinds of sub-enterprises in it. Are we just talking about the corporate, the HR, the finance and stuff like that? What about the stuff we make in the factory? Oh, what about sales and marketing? What about our supply chain management? Oh, what about our partners in the ecosystem? Where is the boundary? What are we going to look at? Where are we going to start? Again, it might seem obvious, but a solution that works just for your corporate HR might not work in the factory. It might not support your logistics supply chain, okay? So right at the beginning, let's be clear about that enterprise. And as I said, with very, very large enterprises, this is particularly important, okay? And again, if you get it wrong, it can come back to bite you. And then the next part is prioritize, okay? Again, if you're a large organization, you've got so many different kinds of data, you want to bring it all into scope, you're very big, you want to try it and be all inclusive. Well, you can't do everything all at once. In terms of prioritization, what are we going to do first? Are we going to look at our knowledge, the wisdom that we've got locked in people's heads? Is that where we're going to focus? Are we going to focus on the corporate stuff, or is that maybe a third priority? That archival stuff, maybe we can park that for a while and get onto that later on. So again, it's obvious, but again, it's so easy to get it wrong and be overambitious or unclear. Next thing is a sort of what we call a capability development roadmap. Okay, most organizations that we work with, they already are doing data management of some kind. They might have mainframes that have been there for 30 or 40 years. They've got legacies of mid-size and mini computers, and they've got cloudy stuff, and they've got all sorts of stuff. They've been doing data management for a long time. But, how good are you doing it at the moment? What's your current state of maturity? And, you know, if we can identify things that are done well, we can leave them for a while and focus on other areas that are done poorly. And so having the ability to come up with an assessment quickly of current state of maturity, and then in terms of where you want to be, have a target state of maturity, this is an important thing to do. Now, a warning here with maturity assessments, you can end up with false precision. So we've come to clients who says, oh, we've done a current state assessment. We're at CMM level 3.629 recurring. No, you're not. That's just nonsense. That level of precision is just completely bonkers. Usually the level of precision that you can get is low, i.e. not doing it at all, or kind of thinking about doing it. Medium, oh, we've made a start. And high, oh, we're doing it quite well. That's pretty much as fine-tuned as it gets for most organizations. Going beyond that usually introduces spurious precision, and you don't want to go there. And also, this is where the wheel comes in handy. It's a nice little visual representation. It succinctly says, here are all the different facets of data management, and we can color in the wheel. With 3 colors, we can color it in, or we might have gray where we haven't looked at it yet. So it's a very, very simple, here we are now. Oh, there's lots of red over there. So here's where we want to be. Oh, we've got the right amount of green in the right places. Now, a warning here with these capability development roadmaps. If you've got capability of, oh, we're really good, we're a medium in SAP, we're a low in Oracle, we're a high in IBM, stop, okay? These capabilities should not refer to proprietary names and products and technologies, okay? You've got to keep focused on the data management practices as defined in your guidebook, in this case, Dharma DMBOK, okay? Don't express capabilities. In terms of end state implementation and current implementation, yes, we use proprietary names to talk about our current state implementation and maybe our target end state. But in terms of capability, no, you don't express capability just using proprietary names. If you are, ooh, you're seriously off track. Okay, and this here is, what do we do with this? Well, usually our future state, there's intermediate states, and this is all part of your planning. So in terms of your enterprise data management program of work, you should have something that looks a bit like this, okay? A development roadmap with intermediate states and so on, okay? As I said, if you're only ever using proprietary names, you're never going to get this right. You've got to have an independent way of describing capability. Another indicator of goodness is, what are you doing in terms of governance at the moment? And often people go, oh, what's that, John? Are we supposed to be doing something? Well, yes, you are. And look, I'm not going to, this isn't a deep dive into governance, that's another presentation, but look, at a high level, we should see something that looks a bit like this org chart here. So we've got corporate side of the house on one side, business side of the house on the other. Ideally, we'd be looking for something like a chief data officer up there with the other CXOs, preferably on the business side of the house. Ideally, that's what we want, okay? And in the different divisions of the business side of the house, we'd expect to see data stewards who have some sort of functional reporting line into the CDO. Generally, it doesn't happen. Organizations that have a CDO, they're buried somewhere down in the basement of the IT shop, okay? Which isn't really ideal in our opinion. I think data management, in order to get your program to work, you need to have a champion at the senior level and someone with authority to say, well, that's good and that's bad, we're not doing this, okay? Most importantly, in terms of governance, clear, simple, unambiguous, easily understood and communicated accountabilities and responsibilities, all right? If that's absent, your program of work's doomed to fail, okay? This is just very, very simple. We've got the different functions in terms of stewardship, steering committees, approving this, that, and the other, who develops the strategy. And in terms of those roles, in a real one, you'd probably have a few more roles, but basically you need to have something like that at a high level. Otherwise, it will go off the rails very, very, very quickly. Another aspect of governance, and this goes back to that story about the fundamental practices. In order to do enterprise data governance, you need to know, oh, what data do we have? Where did it come from? How did it get here? Who can access it? What can we do with it? Is it any good? All of that stuff is the bread and butter of metadata. And that metadata needs to be captured right at the beginning of your program of work and organized and managed in your enterprise information catalog, because that's the source of truth for all governance matters. Who should be using this data? Where did it come from? What can we do with it? Those sorts of governance questions are answered by your enterprise information catalog. Everything that you do in your organization, whether it's on the IT side of the house or the business side of the house, is probably going to read or write metadata or create metadata into that catalog, okay? If you don't have it, you have this. You have fragmented or absent data governance. In order to understand what data we have, where it came from, what does it mean, what can we do with it, you end up copying data all over the organization. It's a mess, okay? You should not be willy-nilly copying data all around the organization just to understand what do we have, where does it come from, what does it mean? No, that comes from your catalog, okay? So that earlier one is what we call the governance tree. And we look for it. And if it's not there, we say it should be. Okay, another indicator of goodness, data literacy. Now, this doesn't actually appear in the Dharma wheel. It's not there, but it is vitally important. Look, the problem is these days, most people think they know data, all right? They've got a smartphone, they use Netflix, they download stuff. Oh, they've got data. No, you know absolutely nothing about data if that's all you know. All right. You know, the basics of where does data come from? How is it used in processes? What's the difference between good quality and bad quality data? How do you design data? All of those things, the level of understanding, in our opinion, is pretty low. And this is true across pretty much all sectors of industry. We see this in government, we see it in banks, we see it in telcos and retailers. And as you move up the management food chain and you get up to your CXO level, often the level of data literacy is woeful, all right? Now, that is a serious problem because at the highest levels of the organization, when the CEO, CFO, and other people sign off, what on earth are you signing off on? Oh, this data-y thingamajiggy stuff. It's good though. No, you've got no idea what you're signing off on, all right? So data literacy, it's critically important through all tiers of management. It's not just an IT thing. It's not just those developers. Everybody needs to understand data. It's the language of business. If you don't speak data, you can't run your business properly. Okay, and look, there's lots and lots of good literacy programs out there. You know, you don't always have to create your own, but it is a critical indicator of goodness. Without a well-structured, organized literacy program or sub-program, yeah, it's going to fail. All right, you're just not going to go anywhere. Data stewards. Who are these? What do they do, and why do you need them? Data stewards are people in the business side of the house. They might be attached to a program, they might be attached to a project, a line of business in BAU. These are people who know data management really well. Okay, they're the advocates, the champions of doing data management right. Okay, and they need to be embedded in the business. It's their business. So if they're in the HR is their business. Oh, but you're a data management professional. Yes, but HR is your business. If you're on the factory shop floor, you know, manufacturing stuff, that's your business. But it's also, you also need to know data as well. And they need to be skilled in many of those different facets. So we saw those different facets in the wheel. Now, they don't have to be gurus in everything, all right? But the analogy I use here is they're a bit like a GP. You know, you're feeling a bit crook. Oh, this hurts, or oh, that doesn't feel right. You go and see your GP. Your GP needs to know a lot of stuff about anatomy and medicine and physiology, but they don't know everything. So what do? They refer you on to a specialist. And that's where something like the Center of Excellence or the CDO office, there needs to be somewhere in the organization a small collection of data management gurus. So when a particularly gnarly business problem comes along, oh, what do we do with this data? Oh, Steward goes, oh, this is a bit beyond me. I'll go and call the specialists, all right? And they know when to call those specialists in, all right? So stewardship, it's that making stuff happen in the business side of the house. Who is there? Who are you going to talk to when you're not sure? Well, you're going to talk to your steward. And if it's too complex, they refer it on to your specialist. And keep it simple. You know, you don't need 15 different categories of steward with 6 different levels of competency. Just keep it, you just need one kind, good ones, okay? And that's enough to start with. But if you don't have any and they're not trained, that's a warning sign. So the next few slides, it's going into stewardship in a bit more detail. I will skip over these quickly because you can read the presentation. But the sorts of things that stewards need to understand is that connection between business processes and data. They're just 2 sides of the same coin. Business processes produce and consume data, all right? Data is managed by people knowing that business processes produce and consume it. It's so, you know, if in your organization you've got things like business process owners who often take a horizontal view across the organization, they need to work hand in hand with data stewards. Data stewards need to understand process engineers need to understand data. Where do you go for information? Well, your first point of call, of course, is your enterprise information catalog, which is your source of truth for all matters to do with data and hopefully process as well. Data domain definitions. This is a fundamental part of managing structured data. Let's get some examples of here. I won't go into too much detail, but I'm talking here about what's a tax file number? What's the correct format for it? Medicare number, customer reference number, manufacturer number, whatever it is. All of these different data domains, they need to be clearly defined, standardized. Everyone in the organization who uses data and manages data needs to know that these exist. Where do you go to find them? Well, in the enterprise information catalog. Little example here. You probably read it later, but this is colors of the rainbow, but it's the same principle. What are the colors of the rainbow? Well, we have the domain there, yellow, green, orange, blue. We have another domain defined using that one. Not going to go into too much technical detail, but this is fundamentally important. Your stewards need to know that, and you need to have those standardized data domains in that catalog so that everyone can read them. Those data domains are vitally important for data quality. Again, your stewards need to know the basics of data quality and the role that those standard data definitions play in doing good data quality. And again, getting a little bit technical detail, but without those defined data domain definitions, and if they're not managed in a repository, your data quality practice is not going to move along very well. Closely related to that, reference data. Your stewards need to know what reference data is, and you need to be managing it well in your organization. What is reference data? Look, it's typical standard values for common categories. The one here, the National Data Standard from the Institute of Health and Welfare, shows the official for Australia categorization for Indigenous status. So, you know, one is Aboriginal but not Torres. So that's the official one that everyone in Australia should use. But guess what? You look at most organizations, they've made up their own. And often they've made up several different various kinds of this, all right? Now that's bad. You need to be all using the same standard. And that's what reference data is about. And your stewards need to know that. They need to understand how that works. Master data, again, stewards need to understand the basics of mastering data. They don't need to be experts in it, but they need to understand, oh, this is an MDM or master data management problem. I better go and call a guru who knows how to do that. Now, in terms of your stewardship, what you need to do as well is for your organization, build up that common framework of practice of data management. Now that common framework's largely going to be derived from DMBOK because 78% of what you need is already written in DMBOK. You just need to add that extra bit that's specific to your organization. Once you've got that, you can then use your stewards as champions of data management improvement across your business. And you know, you codify and put all that stuff in your practical steward handbook. We've seen stewardship handbooks that are just a compendium of policies. No, it's not policies. These are practical work instructions. How do you enrich metadata? How do you use reference data? You know, how do you spot a problem with data governance? All very little practical, simple work instructions written down in your steward's handbook so they know how to do it. Another indicator, it's about metrics and, got that the wrong way around, key performance indicators. If your program doesn't have defined metrics about what success looks like, oh, we're going to improve data, oh, we're going to make processes run better. Hang on, that's not a defined metric. Okay, what do you mean data is going to be better? You know, you need to put some precision. You need to put some metrics in this. Okay, vitally important. Again, often absent. It seems like an obvious one. And in terms of metrics, broadly, there's two different kinds. In terms of the data itself and the quality of the data, what metrics do you use? How do you know that your data is better? What metric are you using from the before and the after to measure that your data is better? And another one, in terms of your program, how do you know your program's working? Well, that goes back to that capability roadmap. How do you measure capability? Have you gone from red to yellow to green? Okay. So very, very important. If we can't find a detailed description of the metrics, the key performance indicators, and how you're going to measure stuff, then that's a worry. Next topic I'm going to touch on is what we call heterogeneous information processing. Big, long word, but what does it actually mean? What it means is that most organizations have a legacy of lots of different stuff from different manufacturers collected and acquired over a long period of time. So you might still be running a mainframe, you've bought stuff from Oracle, you've bought stuff from SAP, you've got Microsoft, you've got Hadoop, you've got stuff everywhere, okay? That's what we call heterogeneous environments, and most large organizations are. Now, this is important because it goes back to where's the boundary of the enterprise? If the enterprise is your corporate functions only, it might look a bit homogeneous. It might all be SAP. But if the boundary of your enterprise includes your supply chain, your manufacturing, your distribution, your marketing, if the boundary is much bigger, as the boundary extends, oh, it's looking a bit more heterogeneous, okay? And the reality of it is very, very few organizations will be purely homogeneous. If they are, something's gone wrong, okay? All organizations have some degree of heterogeneity. Now, why is this important? Look, once you start building up your capabilities, say around metadata management, you need some automation, you need some tool support, because you can't manage metadata across a very, very large organization without some tool support. So where are you going to get your tool from? Well, I'd suggest you go to someone who specializes in managing metadata in a heterogeneous environment, okay? You can look at Gartner. Gartner's got some good publications on this. You can look in the magic quadrant where people are, you know, some vendors have got, you know, rated highly, some not so highly. Yeah, that's important, but are they specialists in managing metadata in a heterogeneous environment? The problem is, if you buy a tool to manage metadata at an enterprise level, and it comes from one of these vendors of storage and data management solutions, then that tool will have limitations when it steps outside of that vendor's stack, okay? If you want the best kind of tooling to support, say, metadata and data governance, I'd be looking at someone, and we're talking here of the Calibras, Informatica, ASG Technologies, Alex Solutions. These are the people that don't sell storage. They just manage metadata in a heterogeneous environment. So, you know, an indicator of goodness, so, okay, you're highly heterogeneous, but you reckon that that one vendor that sells the database, they're going to be able to manage your metadata across the entire enterprise? Maybe not, okay? Next one's getting a little bit abstract. These are supposed to be snow-capped mountain in a mountain range. What's the analogy here? I call it above the tree line. When you're doing enterprise data management capability uplift, you can't, in large organizations, get uniformity across everything, all right? If they want to do document management in the sales division one way and the manufacturing division does document management, yeah, okay, that's fine, all right? What you need to do, though, is try and get uniformity and standardization of practice around the core fundamental capabilities. You know what I call the spine? So your metadata, your data governance, your master reference data, your quality. Those are the things that you'd be looking, all the business divisions should be doing it the same way. Yeah, it's okay if they archive slightly differently, or document management, they're trim, they're not trim. That's kind of okay, you can work around that. But if you don't have that uniformity of practice in those spine capabilities right across the organization, ooh, yeah, you're gonna run aground. It's just not gonna work, okay? So that's what that's about. So those are, if you like, the indicators of goodness. They are an arbitrary number of 10, but they could be 12 or 11 in a year or two. I think you've got another indicator that we haven't touched.
I think we've lost John. We'll try and get.
Gives you a starting point. Okay. What's happened here to the screen?
Oh, we lost you for a while.
We did. Am I back?
You're back.
Okay. Can we share the screen?
I think you could do that. Oh,
yeah, we're back again. Sorry about that, folks. Slight technical glitch. I think we're back again. So you can use this as inspiration to design your program. As I said, we originally produced this as an assurance piece. So in very, very large projects or programs of work, you'll often have running side by side some sort of assurance role or assurance stream. So we think this model approach or think piece is a good starting point if your role is to go and assure a program. You know, enterprise data management. Are you doing good stuff? Okay. As I said, you can use it as inspiration from scratch if your job is to design a program. But as I said, our original intention was it's largely for assurance. Because when you're designing a program, this is just one input to it. There's a lot of business drivers and influencers, and there's a whole heap of stuff that's going to influence the design of your program. And this might be one of those things that helps. The journey, don't boil the ocean. You know, as I said, you've got to be very, very clear in terms of the scope of what you're doing, the types of data, the boundaries of the enterprise, prioritizing stuff. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing this incrementally, you know, starting with one part of the enterprise, moving out into another and gradually getting there. In particular, something like metadata management, don't try and suck in all the metadata from every single little bit of information source in the entire organization, because there could be thousands, tens of thousands, and the amount of metadata you suck in is huge. Start in one branch division and work your way out, okay? Or some variant of that. There's also a nice story. I didn't invent it, but I like it. It's called Find a Silver Thread. Convincing senior stakeholders like your CIO, CFO, departmental secretary, whoever it is, convincing them that you're doing good stuff and you're making progress and you're on the right track can be quite challenging. Sometimes things like enterprise data management, metadata and governance, it's all a bit woolly and abstract. You've got to be able to communicate to people and show them, look, here's some business value. Here's some business value coming out. This analogy I like, it's called Find a Silver Thread. So big suspension bridge, Golden Gate Bridge, it's actually made up, those big cables are made up of Golden Gate, 27,000 wires, and they all run end to end. But when you're building that cable, you have to start somewhere, that first piece of wire which goes from one end to the other and then comes back. I think with large programs like this, you know, you've got to be able to quickly find silver threads right at the beginning. And you want a success story, which is all about those silver threads. And this is kind of what a silver thread might look like for you. So here we've got an executive, CEO, CFO. Oh, these reports are rubbish. Okay, what we're going to find out in our business processes and our data management practice, where's that faulty work instruction that's generating the dodgy report? We revise the work instruction, we deploy it. Oh, that report's much better. That's the silver thread. There was a problem, we've investigated it, we've fixed it, we've deployed it. That's the silver thread. And then we do it again, and then we do it again and again and again and again. And often the program is built out, the success story is built out from a collection of silver threads. And when you have 27,000 success stories, then you've got something like a suspension bridge that'll hold up hundreds and hundreds of tons of stuff, okay? So that's a good analogy. So look, that concludes the presentation. Sorry about some of the technical glitches. Hopefully you've been sending questions in. We've got a short time now to answer some of those. So Andrew, Simon, have we got some questions come through?
So far, the only real question is for Andrew rather than you, John, which is an administrative thing. Where is the presentation going to be available afterwards?
So somewhere off the Dharma website. Andrew can confirm that.
Yeah, it'll be on the Dharma website for Dharma members. For non-members, I might just send out a link to it.
Yeah, and
people have attended the event. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll also put a link to the Catapult website as well. So it'll be on those too.
So there's one more question. You want to read that?
Yep.
So the metadata solution vendors mentioned, for the most part, don't provide other EDM capabilities like DQ, data quality management, ETL, integration, etc. This has the disadvantage that the metadata may be quickly out of date as it is not tied to the physical EDM implementation. Do you see that as a weakness of these solutions?
No, not at all. All of these products, the big enterprise scale products, they continually can, continually refresh the metadata from the data sources. It doesn't really matter what vendors you're using for your ETL or for your database design or for your analytics tools. It doesn't matter. These products can connect to just about every data storage, data management, analytics technology there is. And that's why you should go with them, because their success relies on being able to connect to hundreds of different proprietary technologies, understand where the metadata is, interrogate those installations and suck the metadata out. The whole point is they're designed to work in highly heterogeneous environments, and that heterogeneity extends it extends beyond the database or the data lake. Whatever that data source is, there are ETL tools, there's going to be various analytics and reporting tools, various integration tools. If you select one of those specialist vendors who manage metadata in heterogeneous environments, they will connect to just about everything. And if there's something they don't currently connect to, they'll write a connector, okay? Because they live and die by their ability to do that. They're not making money by selling storage or database products or other software. They're making a living by their ability to connect and understand everything that is out there, okay? And if they can't do that, they go out of business. So, it's not an issue. So if your analytics and your ETL and all of that stuff is all from different vendors, that's all good. It's just more heterogeneity. And by going with one of those heterogeneous specialists, your problem's solved, okay? If you go with, your database vendor or your ERP vendor, and you're relying on their product to manage metadata in a heterogeneous environment, you'll come unstuck very, very quickly, because they don't live and die by their ability to connect to hundreds or thousands of other proprietary systems.
Okay, John, another question. What about the impact of the recently introduced regulatory rules such as GDPR to the EDM program of work?
Yeah, so GDPR is very important, and having the right metadata tools is very important, because to understand where your sensitive data is, how do you find sensitive data? Well, the easiest way is go and look in your metadata catalog, because your metadata tools have gone across your organization and they've automatically gone and found it for you. Oh, there you go, problem solved. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and some of these vendors do actually have quite powerful add-ons to the metadata catalog that basically then do what I call meta-analytics. They'll then look at that metadata and they'll work out, how much sensitive data have you got? They'll build a heat map in terms of your information landscape. Where is there sensitive data? Who can access it? Who is accessing it? Are we likely to have a data breach? Where's the risk? So that's an analytics, a sensitive data privacy analytics add-on that works on that metadata. I mean, if you haven't collected the metadata in the first place, then obviously you can't use that tool. And it's just pointless trying to do this manually. It just takes centuries to go through and find all the sensitive data and process it. You just buy a tool, get a good quality metadata tool, connect it to all your information sources. Once it's sucked in the metadata, put the plug in to do your sensitive data, your privacy analysis, and job done. It just does it for you automatically.
Okay. So many questions. We get another one here. How can we produce a silver thread if you're only starting the metadata as shown in the diamond wheel? Do we need to do an end-to-end first for the small piece of work?
Yeah. So look, if you're collecting your metadata properly, you'll be collecting it all through what we call the data life cycle. So you've typically got source systems, and then there's maybe some CDC or ETL practice that moves data from the source system into a warehouse or a lake. And then you've got other tools that do analysis and reporting. That's typically referred to as your data life cycle, journey of data. Look, the good metadata management tools will connect all the way through that pipe, all the way from the source through the ETL into the warehouse, into the analytics and reporting, okay? And so you will have that metadata to allow you to build that silver thread, okay? There's a lot more to it than just capturing the metadata. At the end of the day, you've got to find, for a silver thread to work, you've got to find an executive pain point or an executive who is experiencing pain, understand what their pain's coming from, say they don't believe anything that's in this COVID report that you've produced with a flattening curve. I don't believe a word of that. It's all wrong. Okay, well, we better do some investigations. Go and find out in that data life cycle. And this is where things like lineage is important, to understand for any specific pieces of data in that report. How did it get into that report? What analytics tool did it go through? Which bit of the database was it going through? Which bit of ETL? Once you understand the provenance and lineage of that data, then you can start to investigate and go, oh, well, here's why that flattening curve isn't right. There was an error over here in the ETL step. We can fix that up. Or, we're using the wrong data definition. Schools are closed, the schools are shut down. We got confused there. So the silver thread, you need the metadata, but you also need to be able to understand where the business pain point is, and then be able to trace through from whatever artifact is causing the pain, trace through the lineage and the provenance to understand in terms of that data journey where things might have gone wrong.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions for you, John, which are quite similar. A stock take of data holdings as a starting point is a good idea. How do you convince senior managers to start here and not with bright, shiny new tools? And there's a similar question, which is about what are your thoughts on tying data management capability uplift with technology uplift? In other words, tools.
Yeah, look, the problem is most of the programs of work that we have looked at have failed because there's been a focus on the shiny tools, okay? Unfortunately, some CFO or CIO has been to the Gartner conference, they've drunk too much Kool-Aid, they've come back, oh, we need an enterprise lake. Why? Well, because Gartner said we need one. Oh, what do we do? Oh, get on to procurement. Let's get the lake project underway. Before you know it, the lake project procurement have gone, so we need to buy some software then. Oh, let's put out an RFT for some lake software. Okay, most people have some variant of that story. Okay, and what seems, it might have been a good idea at the Gartner conference ends up in procurement being, we need to buy a tool. And, or sometimes it's just, you know, techos just get carried away. So techo people think, well, what says there? We just buy software. What's all this process and knowledge and weird policy stuff like that? We don't need that. We just need to buy the right software. And, you know, and buying software is interesting. If you look at the psychology of it, it's almost like a belief in magic. Like in Harry Potter, you have the magic wizard's wand. And if you have the right tail of phoenix feather in there, and if the wand's made correctly, it can do magic. And unfortunately, many people believe software is the same. You know, if we've got that equivalent of the phoenix tail feather in our integration platform, then somehow it magically fixes all the data. That's just complete nonsense. So there's various reasons for psychology and procurement and economics and organizational practice why people end up buying shiny tools rather than focused on, what's the data management capability we need to solve some of our hard business problems? That's what the focus should be. Unfortunately, it just drifts off that instantly. And that's why in terms of what does good look like? You've got to be focused on data management capabilities, not buying software. What are the capabilities? And those capabilities are pretty much the same. You know, if you use the Dharma wheel, you're not going to go wrong most of the time. That tells you what the capability is. There's more to it than Dharma, and there's some areas like the data literacy that Dharma doesn't cover particularly well. But if you're focused on capabilities and finding the business problems, understanding where good data management practice will make your business work better, and that good practice involves all those facets of capability, good policy, good process descriptions, knowledge in people's heads, skills of people, and a bit of it involves some software as well, but that software is just one tiny bit.
Okay, we got this sort of 3 questions, or they're still appearing. So there's one here. What do you think are the important or core metadata to collect first? Data lineage, data rules, description of table columns?
If you're a large organization, you know, if you're a big government agency or one of the big banks or something like that, I tell you the best place to start is what we call prescriptive metadata. So we can distinguish between prescriptive and descriptive. Descriptive metadata, when you plug a connector into a database, the metadata tool will suck all the metadata out. That's typically what we call descriptor. It describes how that data is structured and stored. Prescriptive metadata tells you what data should look like. It's data definitions. So what's the correct definition of customer? What's the correct definition of Medicare number? What's the correct definition of stock item number? Those data definitions, that's where you should start. And a number of reasons for that is they are fundamental. If your prescriptive metadata is not codified and captured in a metadata registry somewhere, you're going to struggle to do anything. You need to have that. In a smaller organization, there might not be a lot of that prescriptive metadata, and there may not be a lot of descriptive. But with so we work with very large federal government agencies. The volume of prescriptive data is several orders of magnitude smaller than all the descriptive data that you get when you put metadata connectors onto data sources. Start there. You can get runs on the board very, very quickly with clever use of management and use of prescriptive metadata. Focusing on data domain definitions is where you should start, okay?
So we've run out of time, but if you're prepared to go on for about 5 minutes, John, there's about 3 more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
at the moment anyway.
So there's one here. Can you recommend data literacy programs for the Australian regulatory environment?
Look, not off the top of my head. I'll consult with my Dharma colleagues and see what we've already got. There's probably somebody in Dharma, if not in Australia, somewhere in the world who's already got one. So why reinvent the wheel? If there's a good program out there, we can find it quickly, and Dharma's a good network to try and track that down. I mean, if you're interested, yeah, send an email to Andrew, and we can go and look for one for you. But look, in terms of data literacy, if the program doesn't quite fit what you need, it's not that hard for a data professional to actually tailor it to your organization. And we do that all the time. We might take a generic data literacy and then we fine tune it. Maybe it's the SES band 1s and the EL2s that really need some fine tuning over there. Or, maybe it's the sales and marketing people. We need to do something better for them, okay? Producing that tailored literacy it's not rocket science. It can be done. But as I said, you've got to be careful because, there's so much good data literacy out there. You just don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, John, actually a couple of follow-on questions really about selling the importance of data governance. What strategies have you found that work for educating the executive and middle management on the importance of data governance and accepting and implementing the discipline?
Yeah, so the best way to do it, you need to, what's the big episode? So most organizations have these episodes that cause people in the boardroom to squirm. Oh, remember, we got caught by Austrac laundering money. Oh, we can't afford another $1 billion fine, okay? You've got to have episodes like that. In the case of the big banks, yeah, those are the sorts of episodes when, Austrac fines them $1 billion for laundering money. But, most organizations have got that scary skeleton in the cupboard, and you just bring the skeleton out into the boardroom and say, look, we don't want another one of these, do we? Ooh, no. What do we have to do to stop doing that? Get serious about data governance. Oh, all right then. Is that hard? No, it's quite easy to get serious about it. It's not that difficult. Does it cost a lot of money? No, it doesn't cost a lot of money to get serious about data governance. Oh, do we have to buy a lake? Do we have to buy an integrated? No, you don't have to do that. Data governance is easy. All right, it's not that hard, and it doesn't cost a lot of money. Oh, and that will stop that. Yeah, we don't want another one of those episodes. Okay, and most organizations, they have an episode, or sometimes they've got several episodes that you can drag out at the board level and say, you don't want that to happen again, do you? You nearly went to jail and you lost your job.
So the follow-on to that is, what about the small to medium enterprises? We don't necessarily have the capacity to undertake big programs.
Yeah, look, it's all about horses for courses. So you just tailor it to what you can afford, okay? And the same principles apply. It's just, the numbers are a bit smaller. So you still got to do data governance. You still got to manage metadata. You've got to understand what is data quality, what's good design, what's bad design. You still do these. It's just instead of having, 200 people in your assurance branch, you've got one. Okay, so it does scale down, and that's with enterprise data management. You're going from orders of magnitude from the smallest to the biggest, but it is the same practice. It's the same principles. It's just the number of people and the size of the dollars is a bit smaller. That there are some concerns around the software. Bear in mind, software is not everything. It's just a small part of capability development. But, sometimes the vendors need to be reminded, this little, council in Victoria, they're not the same as NAM, okay? You can't charge them, what you're selling to NAM is their entire budget for this financial year. So you've got to work carefully with those vendors that sell the software, and you just sometimes have to educate them a bit and say, look, they can't afford that. And some software vendors specialize at the top end of town. Others will do to the small to medium-sized businesses. It can be done. It does take a little bit of skill and effort,
to tailor something to the right size, but it can be done. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's one. What was one more? Do you know about OData? There's one here. There are any risks of decommissioning data warehouses and moving it to OData for reporting?
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, we've done warehouse redesign and rebuild. Sometimes the warehouse isn't what you really need. We need to have more detail. We can have a look at it in terms of what the real problem and the concerns are. So if someone wants to send an email to Andrew, he can forward it on. We can answer that in a little bit more detail with more authority. You need to understand a bit more context.
Okay, the last question then we'll have is data quality. Is data quality is always mitigated? What's the best way to start with data quality? Document the business rules, or do you need a data profiling tool?
Look, ideally, you need to have an episode that at the board level, at the senior levels, people are scared and worried about. That's always the best way with any of these initiatives to move them forward. So, and that's more political rather than, it's not a technical answer. But yeah, look, again, with many organizations, you can usually find an episode that is related to poor data quality. Profiling is a good activity to do. If you're doing profiling, having those standard data definitions, that prescriptive metadata is quite important. So there's a lot of variation in terms of the value that you get from profiling. If you're using those that prescriptive metadata to drive your profiling, you get more out of it. Okay, so profiling and it's usually an easy thing to do. However, you know, as I said, capability, it's more than just the software. You need to understand the root causes. So profiling might tell you, you know, your data's crap, it's complete rubbish, but why? And the root cause analysis, software is not going to tell you that. You're going to have to understand in terms of which business processes made this data. Where did it come from? How did it get here? You know, lineage might help if you've got good metadata. The lineage tool might guide you on that journey. But look, usually it's just a question of talking to people in the business. You know, where's this data come from? What process it is associated with? Who's the process owner? I'll go and talk to them. And then you sort of do that root cause analysis and find which bit of business process is making the data bad. Or it could be the root cause is, yeah, you should never have bought a lake in the first place. That it's coming out of that lake. No, the lake's the problem. You just shouldn't have you shouldn't have put data there in the first place. So that root cause may be associated with a bad technology decision and a bad database design. It could be from a technical perspective, you know, it's an unnormalized table and it should have been in BCNF or something. There might be some technical design issue that's causing it, or it could be, you know, a work instruction in a business process somewhere needs to be rewritten. You know, that kind of root cause analysis needs to be done. And in order to do that well, you need to know more than just data quality. You need to understand business process. You need to know how to talk to business process owners. You know, you need to understand database design. You probably need to know quite a bit of stuff to do root cause analysis well. And often a highly trained and effective steward will have enough knowledge to do that kind of root cause analysis.
Okay, well, that's it. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, John, for the presentation. That's very good. I think we'll have to have you back another time.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
Talk about metadata or something.
Okay. Thanks.
So thank you, everybody. And don't forget to look on the website for more events that are happening in the coming weeks. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Cheerio. Bye, everyone.